closes, my reaction is, that sucks. They had good steak. When regional banks close or 3 of them close overnight, it freaks me out. This is why I have my own personal gold reserve. It's part of my personal protection plan. Call my friends at Oxford Gold Group. Call 833-404-GOLD. 833-404-GOLD. That's 833-404-GOLD.
There are more identity threats than you realize. Even if you monitor your credit, only a little personal info needs to leak out, like your social security number or password.
For you to become a victim.
LifeLock alerts you to threats you could miss. If your identity is stolen, a dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will work to fix it. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions, but everyone can save up to 25% off their first year with promo code NEWS. Go to LifeLock.com.
The Republican wants more answers from the Defense Department when it comes to the Afghanistan withdrawal.
House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCaul sending a letter to Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin requesting an interview with Lieutenant Colonel Brad Whited. The Marine was the commanding officer of Sniper Sergeant Tyler Vargas Andrews, who was injured during the terrorist attacks at the Kabul airport during the Afghanistan withdrawal. According to McCall, Vargas Andrews believed he identified the suicide bomber, but couldn't get approval from his superiors to take him out. McCall says the families of the 13 service members killed in the bombing deserve answers. In Washington, Ryan Schmelz, Fox News.
An exclusive club has gotten even smaller.
A new report out finds more than 3.5 million people around the world got cut from the Millionaires Club last year, while those with ultra-high net worth, that's more than $50 million in wealth, also slipped by more than 22,000, according to a report from Credit Suisse, which found global wealth fell by 2.4%, led by a big drop in the value of stocks and bonds. Despite those shrinking numbers, 59 million adults have managed to hold on to their million or more in wealth. In contrast, 2.8 billion people, or more than half of all adults in the world, had wealth of below $10,000. Lillian Wu, Fox News.
Another step in the long quest to one day use animal organs to save human lives. Surgeons in New York City have transplanted a kidney from a pig into a brain-dead man, and it's worked normally for over a month. The experiment at NYU Langone Health marks the longest kidney from a pig that has worked in a person. Researchers plan to track the organ's performance for another month. Also today, a research team from the University of Alabama at Birmingham reported success implanting pig kidneys in a donated body for 7 days. I'm Lisa Lacera. This is Fox News.
Welcome, everyone, to one of the fastest moving hours in radio with the Lawrence County Republican Party. My name is Brandon Taylor. I am the chairman of the Lawrence County Republican Party. And across the table, I have the secretary of the Lawrence County Republican Party, Mr. Lawrence Sutton. I have the director of the Lawrence County Republican Party, Mr. Jared Menz. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
All right, it's good to be back in the studio with you guys. I've been looking forward to this. We've got a lot going on in the state of Tennessee this week. A lot of news we've been talking about. We've had a few meetings. We've got a special session coming up. Also on the phone, we have with us live Mr. Paige Walley, our senator for District 26. How are you, Paige?
Doing great, Brandon. Thank you all for having me today.
Well, I'm glad you were able to be on live with us. We'd rather you be in the studio with us, but we'll take it over the phone if that's the way we have to do it.
Well, I wish I could be live with you today, too, but I'm in Nashville. I had several meetings today in preparation for the special session and then some economic development work with the governor's deputy governor and finance administration director. So just got done with the meetings about 4:30 and couldn't get that hour and 15-minute ride to Lawrenceburg figured out, so I just had to do it from here.
Well, thank you for being with us, and we're going to dedicate some time this evening just to talking about the special session. Of course, you're there. You're in the middle of everything that's going down at the state capitol right now. We're looking forward to being there next Tuesday. We're going to be with you folks on the 22nd, and we're actually looking forward to being up there in the session with you folks for a period of time. Right now, Paige, give us an update on what's going on, because it seems like the news media there's like a lag on the news that trickles out from that, but you should be able to give us a fresh update.
Well, I'll be glad to do that. The governor has called us back into special session beginning at 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon. As you know, originally the governor wanted to call a special session back after we concluded the regular session at the end of April, but emotions are running very high. We thought that there would be a really poor time to try to think through and act on anything that might need to be acted on. We were very uncomfortable. I was particularly uncomfortable with what he was proposing, and so cooler heads prevailed. Our Lieutenant Governor, our Speaker of the House, on behalf of the two bodies, the Senate and the House, suggested to the governor, and he finally agreed that we would wait until late summer, early fall, and if there was something that we needed to take up, that we would take it up then. I still happen to be one that believes we could handle what the governor is now proposing in a regular session, which starts back, as you know, in January, but it is his constitutional right to call us into special session, and we will honor that because we honor our Constitution. So we're going to get back together next Monday afternoon in what we think will be at most a session that'll last through Thursday or Friday. One of the things I think people are going to be a bit encouraged by is that when the governor did put out the official call last week and propose 6 pieces of legislation himself from his office, none of them involved the original proposal that he had of what people would label red flag or ERPO laws.
Well, you said the magic word. You said red flag. So, well, let me ask you this question before we get too far into this. A lot of folks that I know in our area, and we talk to people every day. Of course, we do a radio show. We've got meetings, multiple meetings every month. So we're seeing people that out in the public, and we're talking to them. And I've even got a question or two that I want to ask from some of the folks that are actually in our Republican Party here in this county. But a lot of people want this meeting to be adjourned as soon as you all convene. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, it's not something that can be done as easily as one might think. The way the parliamentary procedure works is that an adjournment resolution for a session has to have 3 readings. And what that means is you have to introduce the resolution to adjourn, and it has to be heard the first day, then it has to be heard a second day, that's the second reading, and then voted on the third day. So following parliamentary procedure, the earliest it could adjourn, if it is gabbled in on Monday, would be Wednesday. So my impression is that folks are going to be open to the idea of spending at least till Wednesday and seeing what develops and reacting as need be. There will be an adjournment resolution there'll be 3 adjournment resolutions, actually, I know that are entered in on the Senate side. One will be, and they'll all be introduced on Monday. One will be to adjourn on Wednesday, one to adjourn on Thursday, one to adjourn on Friday. If we get to Wednesday and we're ready to adjourn, we'll vote on it. If we need an extra day, we'll vote on the one Thursday. If we need an extra day, we'll vote on the one Friday. So I think people can be encouraged by the fact that there is nothing that's going to pass that is going to involve infringing on the rights of law-abiding citizens to own and keep their guns. You know, there's not going to be a red flag law that's going to pass.
Well, what about
the one that's going to be taken up in the committee system?
What about the proclamation that we saw issued from the governor just a few days ago? And, you know, it mentioned a couple of things. Actually, number 12 seems to be the hot topic that really looks like it could go toward a red flag law to me. You know, and I can read that for folks here. Maybe they're listening on the radio. They may not know exactly what we're talking about, but I can read that number 12. I'm going to pull it up right now. And but it states, there's actually a couple of them on here, Paige, that I'm personally am not very comfortable with. Number 12 is one of them. It says temporary mental health orders of protection, which must be initiated by law enforcement, must require a due process hearing, must require the respondent to undergo an assessment for suicidal or homicidal ideation, must require law enforcement to prove its case by clear and convincing evidence. Okay, and it has to be reevaluated every 180 days. I mean, this looks to me like a red flag law. Has this been taken off the table at this point?
It hasn't been put on. What the governor has done is, of those, I think there are 18 points.
That's correct.
And that is what could be covered in the special session. The governor has the authority to set the parameters of the topics that could be considered, but then it's incumbent upon the governor then to propose legislation. The governor's proposed six bills, and none of them involve that. Now, there will likely be some Democrats who will introduce something related to what you've said. They're not going to pass. You know, we have supermajorities in both the House and the Senate, and any bill that's going to be introduced, and just so you know, all of the bills that are going to be introduced that could possibly be heard, they will have to be introduced by this Friday afternoon, so day after tomorrow on the House side. On the Senate side, they have to be introduced by Monday afternoon.
Okay.
To close the business. So we'll know everything that anybody wants to possibly have considered. The process would then be those are assigned quickly to committees who take them up. I will assure you our committees are not going to, take up and support anything like number 12. But the governor has himself authored 6 bills, and none of them have to do with those things. They have to do, and I can cover those that he is referring on for consideration in committee. Some of which are fairly straightforward and probably relatively easy to support. Some of which may not be.
Are you seeing some support for any of these 6 bills? Are you seeing that pick up traction in the Senate?
Oh, I think several of the 6 bills are going to be supported. So, for instance, one of them is a resolution directing the TBI to report on the state of human trafficking in Tennessee, child and adult human trafficking. I can't see anybody not supporting that.
Okay.
We all know, and if anybody has gone to the movies recently and seen the movie about the Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom.
Right. Then this is exactly what that's set to address. The other one has to do with, and this one may or may not get support, is expanding mental health treatment by allowing registered nurse practitioners to practice without oversight of a supervising psychiatrist, just to try to increase the pool of mental health professionals out there can respond to needs. Another one has to do with directing TennCare to seek a waiver from the federal government.
Hold on a minute, Paige. Hold on a minute.
Allows matching funds from the Medicaid program at the federal level to cover services for mental illness and substance abuse disorders at institutions of mental illness. So right now, for instance, I know Jared is very involved in substance use disorder treatment, and right now at our state psychiatric facilities, if someone is treated for substance use disorder, that's not reimbursable through TennCare Medicaid. So that's one of the things that we're going to be directing TennCare to apply to the feds for a waiver to match funding that would be used for that. Another has to do with the governor already has issued an executive order some time ago with the TBI that requires them to report accurate, complete, and timely records from court clerks to the TBI within 72 hours, and requires those electronic submissions of dispositions and expungements to the TBI. So all that information is out there from the courts, and it's not getting reported to the TBI fast enough. He issued an executive order to have that done. This would just what we call codify that. That is, put it into law requiring that courts communicate that information to the TBI. And then the other one that he is talking about has to do with eliminating taxes on firearm safes and safety devices, providing free gun locks, expanding safe storage training in state safety approved courses, and then creating some public service announcements to promote self-storage, but no penalties, no requirements, no investigations, nothing like that. So those are the things that he has proposed. I think most of those are going to get support, in both bodies. As I think those other areas that you talked about, the 18 areas that are open for people to submit legislative proposals, there are going to be a lot of people that will propose things. There'll be the Democrats who I'm sure will propose outlandish things. Those are not going to go anywhere.
Okay.
So, Paige, let me ask you this. You mentioned that it was the governor's right to call this special session, but doesn't our Constitution say that needs to be a true emergency or special circumstances? Do you feel that this is a true emergency or special circumstances that allows him to call this special session?
You know, the governor may call. He called a special session a couple of years ago that had to do with an economic development issue and issuing appropriating funds for that. So there was an urgency for it. I wouldn't call it an emergency. In this case, I would say back when this was first brought up, it was being portrayed and presented like we had an immediate crisis, as we had thought. As you let time pass over the course of a few months, the crisis seemed to abate. And now even what we see proposed here, in my mind, could wait till regular session. I think many members agree with that. You know, that said, we do know the governor has the authority to do it. We do know that it is not a simple process to adjourn it, as I mentioned. To adjourn with a majority vote, it takes 3 readings, and we'll be done. We could be done with a special session before we could even adjourn technically after that. But I think, to your point, I would agree that I would not consider what we are contemplating doing from what he has proposed as an emergency. You know, he considers it urgent, but I think from many members wouldn't consider it urgent, but do respect that we're going to come in and try to conduct business in a fair, civil, rapid way and protect the rights of law-abiding citizens and not infringe on, law-abiding gun owners' rights.
Right, and it looks like he's done a complete 180 from what he had originally started out in April. But one of the other things I wanted to ask you, and I'm starting to hear this is picking up on the House side of things, they're talking about doing a recess or a recuse until January.
That's something I haven't heard of on the House side. I was speaking to some House members today because I have one piece of legislation, actually 2 I was hoping to file. It turns out I'm only going to file one during this session that involves currently, under current law, when let's say a person from Lawrence County is transported to Chattanooga, to Moccasin Bend for involuntary commitment and then is released. Right now, current law requires that local law enforcement, I'm using that term in quotations, local law enforcement must be informed when that person is committed or released. Well, the department has been interpreting local law enforcement to mean the local law enforcement where the institution is located rather than Lawrence County or Lawrenceburg in this example. This legislation I have is really relatively simple and straightforward. That says if someone is committed to one of our state psychiatric hospitals involuntarily and at the time of their release, local law enforcement and the courts in their county of residence and their municipality residence will be informed, just to be aware. And so that's a relatively simple one, but yet it gives local authorities, the awareness and familiarity with that situation. The other one I was hoping to introduce, and I'm going to hold it for the regular session, it would require a minimum mandatory prison time of 5 years for the commission of a crime with a firearm.
Right, and I had read up on that, and would you mind expounding upon that, because I'm just going to give you my Lawrence County redneck interpretation of that. Okay,
right.
When I see that,
it is consistent with what our current federal law is, and I'll give you an example. I was talking to a gentleman that was a former sheriff's deputy and U.S. Marshal in Memphis, Shelby County. He told me that folks there, and the problems that are going on there with gun violence and, carjackings and all these things by criminals.
It's a very dangerous city.
Yes. Well, and I get that, but one of the things I'm looking at, and I know of a situation personally on this, not me personally, it happened to me, but when I'm hearing this law here, if somebody was to brandish then a firearm because he felt he was in danger to himself or somebody was endangering him, then based upon what you're suggesting, he would go to jail for 5 years or prison for 5 years?
No, it's if you committed a crime with it. So
well,
let's say you carjacked someone, you held up a 7-Eleven, just this existing crimes. We already have, right now we already have in current law that there can be exacerbations of sentences if a firearm is used in state law. Federal law already requires minimum mandatory sentences, and so this U.S. Marshal and former sheriff's deputy said these crooks will do anything to keep from being booked into the federal system because they know they're going to do prison time. In our state system, depending on the DA and the judge, they can plea down and avoid jail time. Now, all that said, again, this isn't going to be considered in the special session. It's kind of outside the call, but it's just something that I'm really looking at the idea of now filing in January, but it's not going to come up in the special session.
Right, and I do understand that, but again, not trying to hammer this one particular instance, but if someone decides, and as you know, if someone shows a gun to somebody, then they can be charged with a crime at that point, Paige.
Well,
and
self-defense is probably what they would then be. It would be kicked out because of that.
No, that gentleman.
And in most of the counties where I'm, familiar with the judicial, proceeding.
Right. Well, we had an instance in Murray County where a man was on his own property with his son, and he was accosted by 4 people, and he showed them a gun, and he's the one that wound up going to jail over it.
Well, that's strange. I know in Hardin County he'd get a medal. So
right. I know that should be the case.
Anyway, back to the other question. We're going to, we're going to take up these. I think that with the committee system we have in the Senate, that there's going to be, not even all the governor's proposals are going to pass. So I think we're going to see something that is very lean and. I think what you would expect, and I think this is maybe a good thing, is those people who might want to be disruptive here, like we had during the regular session, might want to see take away people's, honest, law-abiding citizens' guns. Are going to be not only disappointed but upset because it's not going to happen, and they're going to leave very disappointed. And you would ask, I think, Brandon, you would ask earlier, too, about what do we anticipate coming up. I understand that we have as many as 400 state troopers who are going to be prepared to be here. I don't know if we're going to have them all. And if they are all here, I don't know who's going to be doing anything else in Tennessee because that's a bunch of them.
That is a lot.
I think that, the people speeding down the interstate aren't going to have to worry as much. But,
that's good. That's good news.
If we need them, that's going to be available. I'm hoping that's not the case, but I'm delighted, too, that the Lawrence County Republican Party is going to be up here on Tuesday morning.
That's correct.
And as it so happens, I'm very hopeful, Brandon, that you are going to be asked to serve as our minister of the day in the Senate to open our session in prayer that morning.
Well, I may need to have an altar call while I'm up there, Paige, and get a few of those guys baptized while we're up there. What do you think?
Are you doing baptisms?
We'll hold you under the water a long time, buddy. We make sure you'll get religion.
There'll be a bunch of folks that'll be eligible, I guarantee you.
Hey, we're all eligible, man.
That's right.
I'm the front of the line, brother. Hey, I got two quick questions. One, I know that law isn't going to come up in the special session, but I actually do have a law comment on the 5-year minimum mandatory. I mean, I've talked about it on this show. I've talked about it on other shows. I ran one of the largest reentry programs out of prison in the state of California, about 300 people in San Diego County, and I'm not touting anything good about California, but they did have a 5-year minimum mandatory for commission of a crime with a gun. And I used to deal with folks coming out of penitentiary, drug addicts. And I literally have heard people say, man, when I was out there on the street doing drugs, dealing drugs, if anybody had a gun, I got away from them because I don't want to catch a 5 years.
Yeah.
So I've actually...
And, I know it's something that's going to take a lot of consideration and debate prior to introducing it. And, I'm open to... suggestions and modifications and inclusions of, and exclusions of things. And this is not meant to, so for instance, I think, Lawrence, you were mentioning the example of Murray County. So we can certainly even define that this excludes any effort at self-protection, home ownership, defending one's person and property for trespassers and whatnot. But
well, I mean, what the guy did was, to me, it was wrong, because if I'm going to pull a gun, I'm going to use it. I'm not just going to threaten somebody with it. But it would make some people think that, well, if I pull it, I'm going to have to use it. What do you say, Brandon? You're going to skim that smoke wagon?
Yeah, skim that smoke wagon. Find out what happens.
That's right.
Well, Paige, I want to touch on one thing real quick that it's probably what bothers me, the way this law is probably bothering Lawrence. And that's the whole suggestion by the state of Tennessee that we need to lock or secure our firearms. And the reason why I'm not comfortable with this language, and I'm not comfortable with it at all, is because, number one, the government doesn't need to be telling us what to do with our property. They don't need to tell me to lock my car. They don't need to tell me to lock my barn. They don't need to tell me what I'm going to be doing. They have no right. That's an overreach of government, in my opinion. And also, I believe it sets up a foundation or a venue for an individual who has been robbed, the victim of a crime, a homeowner who owns firearms, someone who has their car parked in the parking lot at a mall. They can't carry the firearm into a gun-free zone, so they're having to leave their vehicle locked in the parking lot. They become a victim of a crime. Someone breaks into their vehicle, steals a firearm, commits a crime, and we don't have necessarily any charges brought on state level, but we have a civil suit filed by the family of someone because they're not taking proper measures. And so I'm not comfortable with this language at all.
Leaves too much.
Well, and I haven't studied the detail, but I know that what is not going to happen is there's not going to be any kind of requirement for locks. There's not going to be any kind of requirement for, safe storage on people. I think what I have understood the governor is going to propose in one of these bills has to do with running public service announcements about the same kind of thing, like you might say, wear your seatbelt, be careful, lock your gun up. Now, I don't know, but I'm eager to see this next week. I want to see examples of what they're talking about. And I'll say this again, just because the governor is proposing it, I will assure you doesn't mean it's going to get anywhere and pass.
Well, I can assure you on the seatbelt, that's not just a suggestion. I've gotten a seatbelt ticket before.
Yeah, they actually write the tickets for that.
And I think what Brandon's talking about is it lays the groundwork for a civil suit. So say the state says this is the way you should store your gun. We don't require you to do it.
Right.
You should do it this way. But here's the thing, and we all know liberals love to use the back door of the courts to enforce their agenda. You know what I mean? So if there's a suggestion that I should store my gun this way, if there's TV ads that say I should store my gun this way, and I don't, and somebody steals my gun, breaks in my home, breaks in my car, steals my gun, and then they go shoot somebody with it, the other victim of the crime, because I'm a victim of the crime because I got my gun stolen.
That's correct.
Their family might be suing me going, well, if you would have followed the state guidelines, there was 600 PSAs that you saw in the last 2 years that said you shouldn't leave your gun in your car. And like in no other instrument do we do that. If nobody ever says, man, if someone steals Senator Walley's car and they take that car and run somebody over, he should be liable because he let his car get stolen.
Yeah. Well, and like I say, those are points I think that are well made, and persuasive, and it'll come to the Judiciary Committee. I don't sit on that committee in the Senate, but I imagine they're going to be talking about the very same thing because it's a very conservative group. They're, by and large, don't believe we need to be here during a special session either, and so it won't surprise me if that bill never sees, the Senate floor.
So what do you think about the heat that Governor Lee has taken over calling this special session? Even you yourself say that you really don't think this is worthwhile. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but that's kind of what I'm hearing from your tone. So if I misquote you, let me know. But it seems like even a lot of legislators feel the same way you do. Some even feel more strongly and say we shouldn't be going there at all. The general population of the state of Tennessee, only people that I'm seeing cheer this on, and I was actually just reading, just before the radio show, I was reading some sort of little proclamation made by a Democrat party in the state of Tennessee, and they're really in support of everything that Governor Lee is doing. I mean, how does that look? What's the optics on this when you have a governor, Republican governor, in a very red state that has the Democrat Party cheering him on and the Republican Party saying you need to hit your brakes?
Right. Well, I've got a friend at home, and you've probably heard something similar to this. He told me when I was running for election most recently, he said, Paige, I'll be for you or I'll be against you, whichever helps you the most. Now, I think that's what we're seeing here is that the governor having these Democrats for him is hurting him. That's not helping him at all if he really wanted to do something, I think, that would be of most benefit. So I think he knows, too, that with the big heart that he has, with the emotion that was churned up during the Covenant shooting, with the personal relationship he and his wife had with one of the victims, I think he did what maybe a lot of us would do if we were in that position. That is, maybe our heart got out over our skis a little farther than it should have. And as you said, Brandon, I think a little earlier, or maybe Lawrence, it was you that said it looks like maybe he's gone almost 180 degrees from the original. And you're right.
Yeah.
I think that he was persuaded, obviously, to postpone it. He was then persuaded not to present, his own bills related to red flag. But I feel like he just still thinks that some of this addressing mental health capacity is important to do now. I happen to not agree with that, but I'm going to come up here and I'm going to be prepared to do if something needs to be done. If there are a few of these smaller things, we're going to do them, and we're going to go home quickly, and we're going to protect. That's the main thing. We're going to protect, the sovereignty of the Second Amendment rights of our law-abiding citizens.
Well, and I tell you what, that's good to hear, and I know the people that are listening right now are very happy to hear this because there's been a lot of anxiety among people. But I'm going to I'll tell you this, Paige. What everybody's telling me, and when I say everybody, I'm probably 99% telling me this, is that the governor's been so secretive of this, he hasn't let anything out, and he's not wanting people to understand what he is doing, and it's really made him look bad among his constituents and the people that voted for him.
Yeah, he's in, obviously in his second term, not running for re-election, and so is not having to face voters again in that respect. And so I think that the not having that level of accountability, even though he is a good, godly Christian man, and let me emphasize that. Bill Lee is a fine man, a committed Christian, goes above and beyond when it comes to, being a man of who's willing to walk his talk with his faith. That said, I think you're right. I think it has given people and I hate it for him in this case, it has damaged his perception and reputation in many of their eyes, because, as you said, it has it seems to have blindsided people. And I think he's tried to walk that back, as you mentioned again, with the level of intrusion, that his original proposal was putting on law-abiding citizens. And so I think he's done a lot to respect that. But I feel like, I guess, still felt like he needed to go ahead and
cut his nose off to Spidey's face is kind of the way I look at it.
I'm sorry, what'd you say? I didn't hear that.
Cut his nose off to Spidey's face is what we say.
Yeah, and I'm disappointed for him with that, but I'm really hopeful. And I'll be honest with you. I try to always get to the positive in things. That we're going to do something here that's going to be positive, not necessarily critical and vital at the moment.
Right.
But we're gonna make lemonade out of lemons. Might not be we needed the lemonade right now, but we're going to do it.
Well, that sounds promising, and we're definitely rooting for that to be that possibility. But speaking for me and speaking for a lot of other people in the state of Tennessee, I'm ready for Governor Lee to go back to working on HVAC units. He is doing damage.
Ready for that.
Well, he's doing damage to the Republican Party, and this is what we're here volunteering tonight as volunteers. We're not paid to do what we do, and I'm not going to pick up his slack for him. I'm not going to carry his water. He has absolutely done this to his own detriment. He's ran headlong against his own party in this state. The SEC here in the state of Tennessee has asked for this to be called off. A lot of representatives have asked. He's had secret meetings with a lot of representatives. It's been a very disappointing second term for Governor Lee. And I believe his governorship is in the red so far that it's going to have an impact on who we elect for the next governor. I mean, they're going to be asked questions about how they're going to govern just by the way that Governor Lee has handled himself during this term. And I'll be honest, Paige, I'm not looking forward to 3 more years dealing with this because I don't want to have 3 more years of Democrats cheering our governor on.
And this is going to be extraordinarily expensive. I mean, when you talk about the amount of state troopers are going to have there, and there's other things that those state troopers could be doing. I mean, we joke about tickets, but there's other stuff that this is a distraction to law enforcement. I'm sure that today those strategy meetings of how they're going to deal with these crowds and all this stuff. I mean, so there's an immense amount of resources on the law enforcement side, the logistics side, just like, hey, you got to go, you're going to have to go there for 3 or 4 days. I mean, and everybody else. So, I mean, it's extraordinarily expensive. And to what end is the question?
Yeah.
Right. And it was, it's something that, again, I believe we could have handled during the regular session.
We agree.
And would be preferable. And I think as you said, it's going to take a lot of preparation. It's going to be rapid, but it still is something that I think that could have been better managed during the regular session. But I'm glad y'all are going to be here to both participate and to witness and to stand up and to be counted in doing what I think a lot of our citizens often neglect to do, and that is participate in your government. You're doing it now with your volunteerism, not only on the radio station, but in doing a great job with the party organization in Lawrence County, and then in taking the time, and it's expensive for you, to come here, to leave work, to leave responsibilities, and to let your voice be heard. But I'm grateful for it, and I know others are, and I think it will, it just punctuates, I think, how we need to, whatever we're going to do this, don't hurt law-abiding people, do some positive things, even though they might not be immediately necessary, and adjourn quickly.
We want all those things as well. And I've got a question here, Paige. It's actually from Jerry Geo, who is also a fellow minister, and he asked if I would just ask you this question. So I've got it right in front of me. It says, Senator Walley, hello, Senator. Several times when we have had the opportunity to meet, we've compared our professional disciplines, which are quite similar, with the difference being your level of degree is higher than mine, and our work is centered around children, with you being the head of DCS, while I was a contract service provider for DCS. We both serve children and their families and both know how their personally tragic impact of the mental health issues among those we served. My question is this: I fear that the opportunist, ungodly left will use the mental health as a Trojan horse to attack our Second Amendment rights. Your thoughts on this concern and suggestions as to how we call them out on should they use this reproach. What's your thoughts on that, Paige?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that we oppose this ERPO law. I mean, all of us know that there are extraordinary mental health needs. Both the gentleman that asked the question or posed the question, I referenced Jared earlier in his work in the substance abuse and mental health area. We all know that there are those needs out there. There are these crying needs in our, in our nation, in our communities. And one of the things we have to make sure we do is we've got good laws. We've got good mental health laws to protect the well-being of individuals from harming themselves and others. We haven't always implemented, like a lot of laws, we don't implement them as they're intended, as they should be. They're not resourced. We don't sometimes put the personnel in place to do it. We don't sometimes, finance the numbers of mental health beds that need to be available to take care of the needs. But I think what we have to make sure that we don't, and I was talking to some veterans just this week about this, that I used to work at the VA system in Miami, Florida, and I did my internship there, and got to work with some wonderful men and women, who suffered from PTSD, other traumatic impacts on their lives and their mental health. And one of the things we want to make sure we don't do is discourage people with legitimate mental health issues from seeking treatment because they're afraid they're going to lose their rights from doing so.
That's already happening.
Their gun rights. So
that's already happening, Paige. That's already happening. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm already hearing reports that's actually happening, that people are, veterans especially, are not seeking out
I'm saying
help.
Veterans are the ones I know well,
yes,
having worked at the VA system. And we want to make sure that we don't add to that, by as you said, as the question, the poser of the question mentioned, linking. Just because someone has a mental illness doesn't mean they in any way, shape, or form need to lose access to their firearm. They're not criminals being mentally ill. If they're a danger to themselves or others, we have laws right now that allow for the evaluation of that and the care and treatment of that person. But we don't need to be, compounding it with using mental health and mental illness as a reason to take people's guns.
That's correct.
Well, I tell you what, I really like what you said because I had a question about that to you, especially being a clinical psychologist like you are, and also, and maybe a lot of people don't realize this, but you're also an ordained minister as well.
Right.
And the things that I look at when it comes to the mental illness is it being used against people, and it even talks about it in the Bible when it's used against us, and we don't really need them. And this is just my opinion, Paige, but you are the expert on this. But I look at it biblically, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm not looking at it professionally. I'm looking at it biblically, and biblically, I know that in the future, that mental illness is going to be used against us Christians. They're going to say, you actually believe that a man was born of a virgin, he was nailed on a cross, died, and rose in 3 days. You are certifiable crazy.
Yeah, and I think that you are right. I think we're facing the same thing if you just believe biblical principles about marriage between one man and one woman, if you believe, that certain lifestyles are inconsistent with what the Bible says, if you believe, and you're going to be, I think the time is fast approaching, if it's not already on us, that the legal system is going to come after you for hate speech, for, and I hate that term, but that's just what, something that's out there.
You know what, Paige? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's actually the exact opposite. And I'm going to tell you why it's the exact opposite. Is because when I confront or I talk to the homosexual, God calls them sodomites, when I talk to them, I am talking to them in love. But the person, and especially the Democrats, when they're affirming that lifestyle and they're telling them that, oh, it's okay, that you can live this way biblically and still go to heaven, that in itself is true hate speech there.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I'm, it really troubles me when I see, I walk some of the streets in Nashville going to and from work when I'm here, and you see, certain churches that are really hostile toward people that would believe Jesus Christ is Lord, is the one true God, and that the Bible is the inerrant Word of God, and and is leading people straight into hell by saying you can believe what you want, you can practice what you want, you can do what you want, and you don't have to worry about that. God loves you. Well, yes, God loves you, but He loves us too much to leave us like we are. He saved us from something and for something.
Amen.
And
I spend quite a bit of time in Nashville myself, and my wife and I often have that conversation, probably passing some of the same churches with the signs that you're talking about. I got one other question. I think this is germane to the special session. It's off topic a little bit, but one of the things that we haven't touched on here is we're having a special session. It ties back to the Covenant School shooting too loosely, and I mean, we wouldn't be having this if it wasn't for the school shooting. We're trying to make things better because of the school shooting, and we're not even allowed to talk about or ask about the manifesto.
Yeah, and isn't that the height of hypocrisy? That had we been enforcing the laws that are currently on our books, it's my conviction that this would not have happened. People would have exercised their duty to warn, their duty to protect. And I know, Jared, you know those terms. In the mental health field, we wouldn't be facing this. And it is, we all know this is a tragedy. We all know this is a tragedy that is a rarity, even though we see it in the media from time to time. But we look at the the tens of thousands of deaths due to drug abuse, illegal drug abuse, and whatnot, and it doesn't impact us like this. But you are correct that what happens is we have the left that will take it, just like they did with the George Floyd murder, you remember, and take it to try to basically overthrow the government, to defund police, to to implement an agenda that they have. And to use a tragedy in such, a cynical way, I think that has been the case with this in some instances.
Absolutely.
All of us have deep compassion, deep care. I sat down and spoke to the parents very quietly of one of the children that was murdered, by this murderer. I've talked to other family members and prayed with them, held their hand, and encouraged. And one of the things I'm proud to say is that the demand for doing these things that we talked about really wasn't coming from them. You know, they've lost a child, and they don't want to see it repeated. But their solution isn't to go out and take everybody's guns. You know, they know it was more complicated than that. But you're right, Jared. We're not. You know, it's not easy to get access to see this manifesto. And again, that's another thing that I think that the left does so well. You know, they want to point fingers and scream and yell and denigrate, but when it comes to saying, okay, let's look at what got us here. Let's look at all of the facts. Let's look at who this person was,
Exactly,
and the medications and the hostility and the lack of responsibility that other people in and around them, failed at. They don't want that.
Well, I can guarantee you, if the individual that did this would have been a very conservative person following conservative web pages and had a Trump flag in their basement, the manifesto would have been out
immediately.
Yeah,
immediately.
Immediately. They're covering it up because
inconsistency, hypocrisy. That just as you say, if this would have been a person that looks like me, going in and into let's say into the church in Charleston, South Carolina, and shooting it up,
sure,
like happened a few years ago.
Yes,
African American church. They would have gone crazy,
right?
Because it would have been and would have demanded to know. You're exactly right.
And it should be released. We're saying it. We're okay with it being
released.
Here's
the thing: if there's stuff in there,
let's let it all go.
Right.
I'm
if those security drawings of 5 schools in Nashville,
treat one side different than the other. Let's be transparent.
Paige, we appreciate you being on the radio with us. We've had a little bit of interference on the phone there, and that's always it's not on your end. I think it's somewhere in between. But we've been able to get you on live and have you actually get to speak to your constituents, and they get to hear it straight from Paige Walley tonight where you stand. We appreciate it, and I appreciate what you said. I'm thankful that this thing is turned. I'm thankful we're going to have some lemonade on Tuesday.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to lemonade.
I want y'all to be here and witness it, and I thank y'all for your volunteerism, for your patriotism, for your passion, for this is how government's got to work, and all it takes for us to fall is for good people to do nothing, and to sit back and assume.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. This gives me a wonderful opportunity to get to know and to get to be known, better in Lawrence County.
Sure.
Yeah, and Paige, I'd like to thank you. I mean, you and the other 2 state reps that represent Lawrence County. Even before I was involved in Republican politics, I own businesses. And you talk about us being volunteers. I know what you get paid, and I know how much you work. You're nearly a volunteer. Like you basically get a stipend for what you do.
That's right.
And I'll tell you, and I can attest to this with you, Clay, and Kip. Even before I was involved in Republican politics, if I had a problem with one of my businesses dealing with some state agency, if I call you guys, you either answer the phone, call back. I've seen you hand your business card out to hundreds of people at events with your cell phone number on it. And I'd like to thank you for what you do for the community. And I know that, like I said, for what the state reimburses you for this, that isn't why you're on the phone at 6:00 at night on a Wednesday night.
That's right.
Listen to myself, Lawrence, and Brandon Taylor giving you a hard time about stuff.
Well, and I'll tell you one other thing too, Paige. I will concur what Jared just said, and we're having a meeting, Thursday there in Savannah, with your the 8 county chairman, and they're going to be very pleased to hear what you had to say tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm a little bit on the the grayer side, and I started this back in 1990 when we were the minority, a big minority,
right,
on the House side, And to see us build now to a supermajority is wonderful, but knowing that we can just as easily lose it if we don't stay vigilant.
Amen.
You know?
Amen.
So it's people like you and Kip and Clay and me just working together. We keep this Republican approach, conservative, fiscally conservative, socially, but inclusive. I mean, we want everybody. I want to build our party.
Amen.
And there are a lot of people who are independents and Democrats who are, I think, open to hearing our message, open to seeing. Tennessee is a great state. Tennessee is not like D.C. We balance our budgets.
Right.
We empower our police and law enforcement.
That's right.
We honor God. We, just like we're going to do Tuesday morning, when I hope Brandon's going to open us with a word of prayer in our Senate session. Right after that, we're going to turn and pledge allegiance to the flag.
That's right.
And then we're going to turn and do something not a lot of people are familiar with, and we're going to salute the Tennessee flag with a salute. It's not a pledge per se, but it's a little statement that we make. So we ground ourselves in God and country and the citizens of Lawrence County, Tennessee, first before we do any business. We do it every day.
Amen.
And I think that's really, that sets the tone.
Thank you for that,
Thank
Paige.
you all for having me on. Thank you, Charlotte, for allowing me to participate by phone on the station, and all you do too.
Thank you, Paige. And listen,
Thanks.
if those listening, we want you to hit that subscribe button. Also, hit the like button. Send this video out to your friends, your neighbors, folks that you know that are concerned with the special session. Paige, Walley, you're on here with us live, and we appreciate it. After this is over, we want you to come and be in studio. Give us a little debriefing on how everything went down, what the tone was, and we look forward to that. We appreciate you more than you know for being with us tonight.
I'll do that, and then we'll start gearing up for regular session with visits with you and the good people of Lawrence County, and get our ducks in a row before that too.
Thank you, Paige, and thanks to the Lawrence County Republican Party. Lawrence and I will be back on Monday at 5 o'clock covering Kip's show while he's at the special session. We hope to see you then.
All right. God bless you guys.
God bless you.
Thanks.
Bye.
This is the Rich Eisen Show.
Rich Eisen here on the Rich Eisen Show. Welcome.
Live from the Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.